This is designed to help you and learn how to create a really high quality STEM research presentation abstract. So hopefully you're excited about going to the ERN conference next April. And I'm just going to try to give you some tips on how to write a good abstract so that you get accepted and you can go to the conference and present. I would love for this to be very interactive, so feel free to to come off and, ask a question, bring out your video and ask a question or drop something in the chat, and the team will let me know when there's any questions. Yeah, so just a couple administrative things. I guess I kind of mentioned, feel free to raise your hand or come off mute to ask a question throughout the webinar. You don't have to wait to the end. This will be run about 60 minutes, and that should include plenty of time for questions and answers. So first of all, I would like to start out by using this tool that I like called Poll Everywhere. So you can log into this site that's here, and I believe Claire is going to drop this link in the chat as well. You can also text to this site as well. And so here I am at this Poll Everywhere site, and the first question, I just want to get a little feeling for who is here, who was able to join the conference. So you can just, oh, good. So some people are figuring out how to answer the poll. So just go ahead and let me know what your current academic status is. So you can, should be able to click on one of those responses or text your response. So it looks like so far we have some undergraduate students and doctoral students. And I saw someone highlighted staff, so I know there's a staff person out there, but you can also, click on the responses. There we go. Now we're getting the hang of it. So this is a nice little tool I'm just going to use a little bit to help us kind of give you a chance to interact. And like now, for now, just to give me an idea who is out there on this webinar. So very good. Okay, still we have a predominance of undergraduate students. Welcome. Everyone is welcome to this webinar. Even if you're not planning on going to ERN, you're welcome to attend as well, because this is opened up to the public at large. And I think there will be lots of good tips for you, regardless of whether or not you're going to earn. But if you are, there will definitely be lots of very specific questions or specific material to help you with that. Okay, great. Thank you so much. It looks like people are learning how to use the poll. So we definitely still have the largest majority are undergraduate students, some masters, and a few more doctoral students, postdocs, faculty, and staff. Great. Okay, thank you so much. I am going to go ahead and move on to the next question. So have you ever submitted an abstract to any kind of conference? No answer is the wrong answer, just trying to get a feel for the background of everyone in the group. So whether or not you've ever submitted an abstract. So I do believe there will be some good content here for you, regardless of whether you have or not submitted, but I'm just trying to gauge how many of you have and haven't. So I can kind of, help direct my my presentation today. So good. Okay, so far we have a few more people that have than haven't, but pretty reasonable dispersion between the two of you. Thank you for answering that question. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next one. Are you planning to submit an abstract to the ERN conference? Yes, no, or maybe, not sure. Again, no wrong answers, just trying to get a sense of who's out there and what your plans are. So hopefully, if you are not sure, you'll get some ideas about how to do it and the benefits of going to the conference. I can share with all of you that I've been lucky enough to be involved with ERN since the very beginning. I think I've only missed one conference, and it's a really fabulous opportunity to go and meet other people and share information about the work that you've been doing in your academic research. So it's a really great experience, and of course it's really wonderful for your CV and resume to be able to add something like that onto your credentials. Okay, so a lot of not sures and some definites and some no's. No problem. Let's go ahead and go on to the next question. So this is a open-ended. You can just type some text. If you want the words to stick together, I would suggest you use dashes to keep them together. This is going to create a word cloud. So what are you trying to get out of this webinar? Wonderful inspiration. I like that. Hopefully I'll inspire you to doing submitting an abstract is not so hard at all, really, and it's a few tips to help you be better is what I'm hoping to share with you, and so you can learn how to make a really good one so that you get yourself accepted. Of course, the first step is getting accepted in the conference, and then ERN also has travel awards that you can apply for as well, so you get funded to attend the conference as well. I happen to be in Atlanta right now at a conference, and it's a great city to visit and visit. So great. So opportunity, understanding, learn, abstract, examples, knowledge, tricks. These are all really great things that see you're trying to get out of this webinar, and I'll do my best to help you. Clarity, that's a good one. Guidance is another. I do hope to try to give you some guidance on how to do this. And alternate point of view, very nice. I definitely will try to do that. I think some of the tips that I have are a little bit unusual, and I should probably share with you that I have been in this field for quite a long time and running these seminars. I run this one about writing an abstract, and then there'll be some in January about how to prepare your presentation, whether it's a poster or an oral. So I can share with that as well. I've got quite a few years of experience, and I've served as judges at many of these conferences, including ERN. Okay, great. So lots of wonderful things that you're hoping to get out of this webinar. All right, so here's a little fun one. Who's your favorite scientist, engineer, mathematician, or technologist? So that's just, anyone. It could be a teacher, it could be a famous person, it could be someone who's just inspired you or whatnot, but just kind of curious. Mark Rober, okay. Very nice. Very, very nice. Okay, we're getting some inspirations. Lots of doctors here. A mentor, Benedicti, Skaggs, Tyson's. Yeah. Okay, very nice. I see it was Niels Tyson. He's very, very inspirational, isn't he? Skaggs, Collins. Okay, great. Any Bernoulli? Yes, with the famous Bernoulli equation. All right. Let's see who. Oh, Curie. Curie is actually one of my favorite scientists. She is pretty amazing. If you know her story, she really came around at a time that was very difficult for women, and she did some amazing science, and she fought really hard to get recognition for the work that she did, and discovering a lot about radium. Yeah, she literally gave her life for her science. So very nice. Good. Okay, all right. So that is our poll questions for now. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the slides and continue on with the webinar. So how I've organized this webinar is that I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about why you should even give a poster or an oral. And then I'm going to go over the ERN abstract guidelines and the review process, because when you're applying for something, it's of course always really important to understand how your application will be reviewed. And then we'll start talking a little about preparing your abstract, and we'll go over the development guide and a sample abstract as well. So Some of you may already have an idea of this, but I think it's really great to start with why should you even give a poster or presentation? And hopefully you've done some research and you've discovered something. So science is all about discovery. So you might want to share the results of your research, of your experiments, communicate your excitement for the research, demonstrate your knowledge, your skills, your abilities. Something that you might not think about, but when you present your research, you have the opportunity to actually learn from other people, because hopefully they'll engage with you and respond to your presentation, and you can learn from other people. Also, another thing that people don't recognize sometimes is that you can learn about opportunities that might come through. So someone might come to your poster or your oral and engage with you and tell you about opportunities. A lot of times people are looking to hire people for internships or postdocs and whatnot when they go to conferences, and when they see what you're presenting about, if you're doing something similar to their work, then they might go to you to try to see if you would be interested in working with them. Of course, last but not least, there are certainly prizes and awards, and there most certainly will be at ERN. So there are prizes given out for all of the STEM categories. And typically there are, awards that are given with it, cash or otherwise. But more importantly is when you get an award, that's absolutely going to be a gold star on your resume or CV. So that will help you as your career progresses. So for the ERN guidelines for submitting, so all poster and oral presentation abstracts must absolutely be submitted through their online submission system. And so there's a link there to the online poster submission. And the deadline, as Claire said earlier, is November 22nd, Friday at midnight. And you have to submit through the online system. You can't mail, fax, or anything else in there. You must submit through the online system. So for your eligibility to submit an abstract, you need to be a student currently registered as an undergraduate or graduate at a U.S. college or university. And you also need to have conducted some kind of research in STEM. All areas of STEM are included. We'll actually have a list of those areas in case you're wondering. And then, so people who are participating in the following, and the NSF programs that's listed below are especially invited to, or kind of strongly encouraged to submit an abstract to the conference. And there's the AGAP program, the CREST program, the Entry Point, the Hispanic Serving Institutions, Historically Black Colleges, and University Undergraduate Program, the Lewis Stokes or LSAMP, REUs, and Tribal Colleges program. So lots of great programs that NSF is running. Of course, this conference is being funded by the National Science, funded and sponsored by the National Science Foundation. So these are lots of programs that they are running. So the posters and oral presentations will all be scheduled for Saturday, April 15th or Sunday, April 16th. When you, after you submit your abstract, if you get selected, well, when you submit, you have to specify if you are trying to submit for a poster or an oral, because there's two different types. So an oral presentation is where you have a short amount of time to walk through a presentation. Typically, people use PowerPoint slides. A poster is actually a physical poster, something like 4 by 6. So it's a big, giant thing. And then you'd be standing by your poster for like an hour or an hour and a half, and people will come by and talk to you. So very different formats. If you're not sure, I can elaborate further on those formats. And there's advantages and disadvantages to each of them. I think posters are really more informal, and where orals are kind of more formal presentation, but orals, you have a very fixed amount of time and you can't go over time, where orals, you can just sit there and talk with someone as long as they want to. So if you're graduate students, we will expect you to submit for an oral presentation only. So for the abstract acceptance, you need to include all of the following components, and we will talk about the components in more detail as through this webinar, but you absolutely have to share what your hypothesis statement is about the problem and why the research is important. You want to talk about your methods or controls that you use to do the work. You always want to present the results and then the discussion. So the results and discussions are two different things. The results are what you actually got from your experiments, whether they're field experiments or computer experiments or whatnot. And the discussion is like your interpretation of those results. And then, of course, you want to talk about your conclusions. What does this tell you? And any future research that should be follow on, and any key references. And you always, of course, want to acknowledge your funders and your co-authors or other people that work with you on the research. You will also need to get your faculty advisor approval on your abstract. So as far as acceptance goes, so if you are accepted, your abstracts will be listed in the conference application so that everyone can find you and you'll be listed and people will come to hear your talks. There are cash prizes that are given out for the top oral and poster presentation for each of the STEM categories, both in undergraduate and graduate. So there's two separate categories, one for undergrad, one for grad. And then for each of those categories, there's top awards given for all of the STEM categories. And the awards are announced through this wonderful closing banquet and award ceremony on Sunday night, April 16th. It's a really fun evening. Okay, and here are all the STEM categories that are supported by ERN. So you can see it really covers a lot of different areas from biological sciences, chemistry and chemical sciences, computer sciences, information. So lots of different categories. It basically covers all the various parts of STEM. Including data science, which is, kind of a new emerging field. So you just need to pick which category the work that you're doing most closely fits. And so you will have to specify which STEM area you're going to be submitting to. There are some additional guidelines. So you can only put in one poster or oral abstract per student. So you could be listed as a co-author on a second one, but usually the first author on the abstract is the person who's presenting. So you can only essentially present one oral or one poster. You could have collaborated with someone else and be listed on theirs, but you couldn't be the presenter. So if you're working in the same lab together, there's multiple students, we expect everyone to do their own original abstract. So if you try to submit the same identical abstract, you will automatically get rejected. So each person needs to write their own independent abstract, even if your projects are related or you're in the same lab. You talk about the portion that you worked on. What did you do on the project? The primary author is the one who presents, so there's no co-presentations allowed. Your approval has to be obtained through all your co-offer lists. So if you don't get that, you'll be rejected. Students have to get approval by your faculty advisors and reviewed by your research as well. And we want to make sure, the reason why we're having this is that you have the highest standards as possible for your abstracts. You absolutely make sure you have the correct grammar and spelling and sentence structure, and make sure that you get it edited and proofread. Did someone have a question? I saw someone came off mute. No? Okay, just let me know if there's any questions. I'm happy to pause and take questions. I'm not hearing anything. I'll keep on going. All right, so the review process is, so all of the abstracts will be reviewed for these criteria. So originality and innovation, so of the work that you're doing, the scientific content, that it's really supported by the quantitative information and references that you include in your abstract, the merit of the research itself, the quality of the written abstract, as well as the adherence to the guidance and format. All the abstracts are reviewed by a panel of scientists, so multiple scientists within your own discipline will be reviewing them. I do review abstracts as well. And then the reviewers will be given all the guidelines and asked to review the abstracts based on their compliance with the guidelines that I've kind of just gone over with you. And then once the decision is made, it's final. Unfortunately, you can't dispute it. And once accepted, the conference staff will group all the abstracts in similar themes, whether you're an oral or a poster, and then schedule them accordingly. And the presentation schedule once it's released. So if you are accepted, you'll be notified. And then after a little bit, they'll release the schedule of when exactly your oral or poster will be. And that'll be final once those schedules are set, because there's a lot of people that come to the conference. So it's really a little bit of a chore to kind of get everything together, but the ERN staff does an amazing job of getting the right groups of people together and scheduled really well. So the typical things why you might get rejected are basically if you don't have the components that I mentioned are required. If you don't have a hypothesis or statement of your problem, you don't describe your methods, there aren't any results, and you don't have any conclusions or expected outcomes or future research. We understand that sometimes when you have to submit the applications, which is like now, but the conference is until April, you might not at the time of your submission know all the details, but you should really have a good idea about the project and be able to write something to each of these areas. So your notifications, if you are accepted, will be through email. So make sure when you put in your abstract submission that you have your current email address for all the students and the faculty members. And don't forget to check your email. I know nowadays sometimes email isn't your primary method of communication, but that is how you will be notified about your acceptance. So absolutely make sure you check that information. And hopefully by late December or early January, that's when the acceptances will be emailed out. For the travel award process, the travel award is also a deadline of Friday, November 22nd, and the travel awards will also be notified in late December, early January. So hopefully, you can apply for just to present, and then you can also apply for travel awards. The two are independent, but the timing is the same. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to actually write your abstract. And I'm going to organize this portion of the seminar into these three topical areas. One is just how to organize your ideas, because sometimes, you get involved in research and you're doing a lot of work and kind of get marred in a lot of the details. So first is organizing the ideas about the work that you did. And then second is telling a story about that work. And then specifically telling a scientific story, because that's also really important. Believe it or not, when you go to present your research, it really is, you really are telling a story about the work that you did. So the first thing I want you to think about in terms of organizing your ideas is who are you going to be talking to, right? So you want to keep in mind who is the audience and what do they know or what don't they know? And then, of course, you're going to want to organize your abstract and your presentation into these areas that we talked about that are required. Your hypothesis, which typically is kind of an overview of your problem area. And most importantly, it's the motivation as to why anyone should care and listen to you and learn about your research. And then, of course, you typically want to provide a little bit of background into the problem, which is normally what people think about in terms of probably when you first started working on your problem, you maybe had to do a literature review so you could understand what other people are doing. You want to go through and talk about what your methodology. What did you actually do to try to investigate the problem? What did you find? Those are your results, and then a discussion of those findings. And then what does that all tell you? What are the conclusions you can draw from the research? And the thing that's kind of good news and bad news about research is that you're working on problems that have never been solved. So that's kind of the excitement of discovery. But there's so many things that we probably still don't know yet. So what are those other things that you would want to know or investigate to learn more about your particular area? And as always, you want to acknowledge your co-authors and collaborators and funders. So when you want to tell a story in your abstract and later on in your presentation, you're going to try to make sure you do some storytelling. So think about any good storytelling, whether it's a movie, a comic, or whatever is your kind of favorite areas of kind of hearing about things. What does every story have? It has a beginning, it has an ending, there's something in the middle. Sometimes there's twists and turns. There's maybe some questions. There's some actors, people involved in this. And in the scientific story, the actors might actually be like your instruments, not necessarily always just people. And then, of course, in science, it's kind of what did you discover? What did you learn through your research? So when you want to tell a good scientific story, I think that one of the most important things to learn in science is that there's kind of this old saying, and they say, in science, you learn more and more about less and less. Oh my gosh, what does that mean? That means we get really focused and really deep. We do deep dives into very, very specific technical areas. Like, for example, my training and my degrees are all in chemistry. Well, within chemistry, there's analytical chemistry, there's organic chemistry, there's physical chemistry. So my sub area is physical chemistry. And then within physical chemistry, I did computational physical chemistry. So I used computers to do my work. So again, we're getting kind of more and more detailed into very, very more specific areas of chemistry in general. But I learned a lot of really deep things about my very specific area. If you want to really know, what I did was computational quantum mechanics with applications in quantum computing. So that's really, really a very specific area. So that's what we talk about when you learn more and more about less and less. And the thing about that is when you're in the thick of that, you have all this technical information filled in your brain, and you're kind of swimming in this great, really fun scientific area. But you sometimes forget that I could talk to another chemist, even another physical chemist, or even another computational physical chemist, but they don't know as much as I do about the very deep, specific technical areas. So being able to balance all this technical information and detail that you learned with reaching an audience who doesn't have that level of knowledge is a real art that you have to balance those. And if you are able to figure out how to balance those so you can reach an audience and talk to, so that, people can really understand what you're doing and what you're talking about, that's a real art, and it will take you very far in your career to be able to do that, because you're always going to be needing to tell someone about your work. You're going to be looking for funding, whether it's an internship or a research grant or whatever. You have to be able to communicate the importance of your work, and very specifically. And in my opinion, that's a real balancing act between, kind of sharing some of those technical details, but doing it in a way that people who are not, don't have that same depth of knowledge as you do can understand. So kind of with that as a backdrop, and hopefully with a little bit of inspiration, think about, who is going to be coming and well, first of all, who's going to be reviewing your abstract. So one thing I can share with you, again, so as you saw, ERN covers a broad spectrum of areas within STEM. You fit within one of the categories, and then probably one of the subcategories, and so on and so forth. the reviewer that's going to be reviewing your abstract is likely to be in the same general area. So I'm a chemist by training, so I typically review chemistry abstracts, but they could be very far from my very specific area. You know, I did computational quantum mechanics. I might be reviewing an organic chemist abstract, which of course I took organic chemistry. It was quite a while ago and I know a little bit about it, but I'm absolutely not I do not have a really deep knowledge of what was really going on in some of the labs. So you have to be able to make sure that you can capture someone's attention and express your work in a way that someone who's a scientist or someone in STEM, but not have all of the detailed knowledge that you have. So to get into some of the details of the abstracts, first of all, they can be no more than 100 characters for your title. You obviously want to come up with, you know, an engaging but descriptive title so people understand what you're doing, but maybe something a little catchy is kind of nice. And of course, you just want to use initial capitalizations, not all caps, and it should not be a sentence, it should be a phrase. So that's for your abstract title. So for example, the science of education, life, and the computer era. So that's a really nice kind of catchy title that gives you an idea of what this particular abstract is going to be describing. Of course, you want to put in the primary author, which will also be the abstract presenter. So there's an example. The author's institution, the school you're currently enrolled in, and then any co-authors. So any other people who worked with you on the program, and typically also definitely includes your faculty advisor. So there's an example. Co-authors Jane Doe at Howard University in DC, Mary Doe, Morgan State University, and Marilyn and James Doe at Savannah State University in Georgia. So that would be an example of a co-author list. The co-authors, of course, are not presenters. But they are you're just acknowledging that they were part of the work that you completed. And you do not have to have any co-authors. The abstract itself is limited to 3,000 characters, including your spaces and punctuation, and really needs to include your hypothesis and why your research is important, as well as your methods and controls, your results and conclusions, and future research questions. So here's an example of an abstract. It's a little bit long. So this is a little longer than we typically see, but it is an actual abstract that came through. So I'm going to kind of let you read through it, and I'm going to dissect it a little bit for you so you can see that all the components are there. I'm going to just pause for a minute and let you guys read through this, and then I'm going to see about see if you can find the components. So remember, we want a hypothesis or motivation. We want to have some methods. We want to have a discussion, all of these sections, and then we, of course, want to have conclusions. So take a minute to read through this and see if you can identify the components. Okay, so hopefully you've had a little chance. Has anyone been able to figure out, first of all, what our hypothesis is? Anyone have an idea what the hypothesis is? I'll go ahead and get us started. So our hypothesis here in this particular case is that exotherms should show a reverse size relationship um, that than what has been hypothesized by Bergman's rule. So they talk a little bit about Bergman's rule and what it plans, but in this case, they're actually testing the hypothesis that there is actually a reverse size relationship, and then the one that is presented by this Bergman's rule. So that's the hypothesis that is presented in here. Why is it important? In this case, the importance is because there's, by understanding the relationship between body size and exotherms is something that has been described in the literature about Bergman's rule. And so it's important to really prove whether or not this is actually the case. The methods they used to do this was they took some body size measurements for 5 different populations at high, mid, and low elevations, and they compared those measurements. The results that they found are that there was a significant size difference between high and low elevation, which is actually the inverse of what Bergman's rule described. So that's their results. So their conclusions are that that this supports an inverse correlation to Bergman's rules and suggests a physiological explanation to the rapid thermoregulation that is seen in these animals. The future research, they talk about in looking at the interactions of other factors, such as sexual selection on the male body size and the female fecundity, factors that may help explain why all exotherms don't follow the inverse of Bergman's rules. Okay, so hopefully that wasn't too difficult to see. I was just trying to show you that each of this abstract, while a little bit longer than some, did actually cover all of those parts of the abstract. So you want to make sure that you do that when you submit your abstract. What you also, of course, want to acknowledge your funders, and you can list multiple funders if that's available. And then you have to make sure that you get your faculty advisor or mentor to approve it. And they'll be also listed in the program book. So you want to list your abstract faculty advisor. So just to kind of summarize, the abstract needs to include a hypothesis or a statement about why the research is important and, basically motivate the work, go over what you did to investigate the problem. What did you find? How do you interpret those findings? And what kind of conclusions and future work does this lead you to? Always acknowledge your funders and your faculty advisors, and make sure that you're trying to tell a story that's going to be understandable to your target audience. Someone not necessarily as familiar with the deep details of your work. So that is kind of the formal presentation of the materials. I'm going to go ahead and stop my sharing and take some questions and feedback from anyone here. We have a quiet group today. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question. Is the length of the abstract like does it
Can you,
be
I'm having a little trouble hearing you. If you could speak up a little bit. Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me now? I was gonna ask about the length of the abstract. Typically, how like what is the size that you should not go over when writing your abstract? And do you need to provide every detail that is related to your materials and methods?
That's a great question. So you definitely don't want to go over all the details. So the abstract is supposed to be like more like a teaser, like as much information as you can share just to interest people and give a general idea about your work. So for ERN, the abstract is limited to 3,000 characters in total. So you definitely want to, use a tool to tell you how many characters you have. But in general, the idea is that you don't want to give all the details. You just want to kind of give a general idea. And it's more like a teaser, like enough information to get people interested to come and hear your oral or come to visit your poster. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sure. Okay, Shannon.
It's Shahan.
Oh,
Um,
Shahan, thank you.
no problem. So my question was, hold on just a minute because I wrote it down. What are some common reasons that abstracts get rejected? So we know what to specifically avoid, besides the main things that you guys are looking for.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Typically, an abstract will get rejected, as you mentioned, kind of if you don't have all of the components, and if if the grammar or punctuation is not quite right. Sometimes people get it would take more than just having the grammar and punctuation incorrect, but I would say if it's just not understandable to the abstract reviewer, that will certainly cause a rejection in addition to just not having all the components. So I would strongly encourage that you have someone else review your abstract for you after you've written it. Obviously, probably you'll have your faculty advisor, but you might also try getting another student to review it who's not directly familiar with your work, because remember, the hardest thing is writing it so that someone who's not really familiar with the details of your work can get a basic understanding of what your work is and why it's important. So I think what I was trying to say in the beginning about taking a step back and thinking about what is the importance of it. I think my general kind of guidance is that you probably should put in a lot less details than you think you need to do, and that you should spend a lot of time thinking about just generally how to motivate the problem and get people interested in it, and share, like I say, a kind of a teaser for what you did in a very kind of non-technical way. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, understood. Thank you.
Okay, sure. I see in the chat there's a question about the length of your title. So if typically the title that you put for your abstract is exactly the same title that you use when you present your poster. Claire, I don't know if you want to add any other clarifications about whether or not how strict AAAS will be about lengthening their titles after they submit their abstracts, but typically you want it to be the same as your abstract. Let's see. Then I see so another question about the deadline and when will we know if we're approved or not. So the deadline for submission is Friday, November 22nd. And awards will be sent out via email in late December or early January. So that's when you'll find out. Good. All right. Some more questions or comments?
I also have one more question.
Sure.
So for the students that don't know whether they would like to present or submit a poster or oral presentation, do you have any pointers on choosing which route to take?
Sure. I would say that, well, so first of all, if in case you missed it, if you're a graduate student, then your only choice is an oral. But if you're an undergraduate, you can pick either. I would say that typically, if you've never presented at a conference before, people usually start with a poster because a lot of people think it's a little bit less intimidating. It's a little easier to do a poster because you're not going to be constrained by time, and you're not going to have to make sure you can, you have to be a little more polished and practiced to do an oral presentation. Personally, I think posters are also really nice because they're more conversational, and you can, in ways, you can actually get more in depth with people who come to see your poster. So I think it's kind of a personal choice, whether you want the presentations. Claire, maybe you can help me out, but I believe they're limited to about 10 minutes in total. So you have, and it's timed, so you'll get cut off if you go over time. So you kind of have to be, like I say, more polished and ready, but you also have, you can put together multiple slides in for a 10-minute presentation, where a poster is just one visual. So they're very different formats. I think they're both good formats. Some people kind of think that doing an oral, sometimes getting accepted to do an oral, is maybe a higher bar than a poster. So let's see, I see there's a question about, I think, do you have to have an affiliated NSF program? And I believe you don't have to. People are just strongly encouraged from the particular NSF programs. Is that right, Claire?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, great. So you don't have to be affiliated with an NSF program, but just NSF is strongly encouraging people that are funded through them to apply, but it's not a requirement. I know I'm quite sure lots of people who are not in the programs do get accepted, so don't worry about that. Chris, you had a question?
Yes. It says that the title should be initial capped, not sentence format, and I'm kind of confused on what that means.
Oh, sure. That means that, so first of all, that the title of your abstract should not be a full sentence. It should just be a phrase. Like, let's see, the example we had was, let me pull it out. The title in the example was The Science of Education, Life, and the Computer Era. So it's not a full sentence. It's just kind of a phrase describing an area. In this case, it's, something about education and the science of education. And when they say initial capitalization, that means that the first letter of the words are capitalized, but only the first letter. That's what that means. Let me share my screen and bring this back up again. So here was the example: The Science of Education, Life, and the Computer Era. So that's saying it's not a full sentence, it's just a phrase. And the first word of the main, the first letter of the main words are capitalized, but not the entire word. That's what that means. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, I see another question in the chat about the travel awards. So the deadline for applying for a travel award is the same as the deadline for abstracts. It's Friday, November 22nd. And you will actually hear also about the decision on travel awards around the same time. So late December, early January. So it's a separate application. Is that correct, Claire?
Yes, you will have to apply to the travel awardee application, which is separate to the abstract submission.
Okay, great. So there's two separate things if you want to also get travel, but the timing is the same. Okay, some more questions or comments? I know we have a little bit of wrap up. I don't know if Claire, if you want to start that now or.
Sure. First, I want to just thank Mary Ann for your time, and hopefully you all learned a lot and that we'll be receiving your application soon before midnight this Friday. And I will be sending out the webinar PowerPoint and recording by the end of today, in addition to a survey. And that would be greatly appreciated if you could take the survey so we can continue to do these webinars and improve them to be the most helpful to you. And any additional questions that you all have, you can send to the email that I just dropped in the chat. And thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Good luck, everybody. Hope to see you at ERN. Stop by and say
Thank
hello.
you.
Thank you.